Hey, welcome to the Cam and Otis Show. We're a father-son business podcast where we talk with other lifelong learners about making an impact and solving big problems. And when it comes to making an impact, we've got my good buddy, good friend, almost next door neighbor, as the crow flies, Hark Herold joining us. How you doing, Hark?
I am doing fantastic today. Thanks for
Awesome.
having me.
Man, I am. I'm always excited when I have a good friend on because it's actually it's a test for me because I try to mitigate the Otis wanting to go into the BS bowl and just hang it out, shooting the shit all day long. But really, I've been thinking about this all day, and what I wanted to jump on was the fact that this leadership thing that you've gotten, this EOS that you're doing now, and I'll let you explain it, define it. But really, what was the platform that launched you into it from your Air Force career?
Yeah. No. So to recap, so 28 years Air Force, had command of units both stateside and in deployed combat situations. Right. Then after that, I spent years laser focused on supporting military veteran, military spouse entrepreneurs, anywhere from ideation to multi-million dollar organizations. And so what became clear is the organizations that excel, whether it's a deployed combat unit or a civilian product or services company, the ones that truly excel have a great vision or mission. They have people aligned on that vision or mission, operating as a team, and there's a framework in place to ensure execution with discipline and accountability. And so I encountered EOS as a user of the system. The organization I was with was running on EOS. And during COVID, right, we had to do a complete pivot of the organization. We needed a new strategy, a different structure, and get the right people in the right seats with new seats. And so EOS provided us the ability to have that framework, and we emerged from that a stronger organization, providing greater impact to our users, our customers, and with increased funding. And so I'm like, this is fantastic. This does for organizations exactly what I've seen successful both within the military and in the civilian sector. Yeah. So EOS is.
I gave him too big of an open-ended question, is what I did.
Well, you wanted the lead in, right? So EOS is a set of simple, real-world, practical tools, a proven system that can help organizations to. It orchestrates and harmonizes the different moving parts of an organization. So it's not a computer operating system, it's a business or a people operating system. It's how you run your business. So it stems from the premise that all organizations deal with 100 plus issues at any one time. But if you can strengthen 6 key components of your business or your organization, those 100 plus issues tend to fall off because they're really symptoms of the true root cause. So I work with organizations to strengthen those 6 key components. And those components are the vision, which is simply where you're going and how you're going to get there. The people component, and we go through a process, we cut through the bullshit of top quartile, best 10%, and identify who truly are the right people for that organization, because the right people for one org are not necessarily the right people for a different organization, right? The data component, which is about running your organization on facts and figures, not gut feel or hunches or intuition. And once the vision, the people, and the data components become strong, then the organization becomes more transparent and you're able to identify your issues. And so the 4th key component is about the issues component, because no organization is going to excel unless they get really good at setting up their issues, knocking them down, and making them go away forever. The fifth key component is process. And this is about identifying the handful of core processes in an organization and doing those things consistently each and every time. It gives you quality control, profitability. It makes it easier to manage. And then the sixth key component is what we call traction. And when you look at the model, vision is at the top and traction's at the bottom, because this is about bringing that vision down to the ground and executing throughout the organization to achieve that, because vision without traction is hallucination. And so we really work with a leadership team to strengthen those six key components.
Now I'm gonna reverse a question that I usually ask all my veterans that are on the show, but let's see if I can pull off reversing the question, because what you've done, you've done a really great job of defining the EOS process. But as you dove into it, as you lived it in the previous job, when you think back and reflect back on your time in the Air Force and those leadership roles in the Air Force, connect the dots for us?
Yeah. So again, it's so the EOS. So let's be clear. EOS is the entrepreneurial operating system. It is the target market is companies that have 10 to 250 employees. Right. That is the target. About 80% of the companies running on EOS are in that size. So obviously the military is much larger for that, and it's not an entrepreneurial organization, right? But it did have that vision, right? People knew what the mission for what they were doing, what it was. It made you work as a team. Everybody knew what they were accountable for, and everybody depended on everybody else to meet their accountabilities. And when we're working with an organization, we help them to develop an accountability chart, not an org chart, because an org chart has like duty titles or job position descriptions, and ego becomes involved. And I don't care if you're the chief marketing officer, the senior VP of marketing, or the marketing director. I don't care what you call yourself externally. What I care about is what you're accountable to for the benefit of the organization. So everybody knew what they were accountable for. And one of the things, like right when I was deployed, I was commanding a civil engineer squadron, which is plumbers, carpenters, electricians, heavy equipment operator, EOD, firefighters. And so I need to be able to help them to draw that line between what they're doing every day and how that contributes to the bigger vision and mission. And EOS enables that to happen in a civilian organization. And again, what I saw was all of those things that I wanted to help organizations do, EOS provided.
So how hard was it to adopt? I'm guessing it wasn't when you were at Bunker Labs. I mean, that's where you got the user side of it. How did you stumble into it, I guess?
Yeah. So when I started with Bunker as a volunteer, then ended up, joining the staff, and eventually ended up as the president chief operating officer. But they were already running on EOS. So they were using the system when I got engaged with it. So it was already happening, and I was just, impressed with the clarity it brought to the organization.
So where do you go when you have a system like this? Do companies graduate from it? I mean, because you mentioned kind of the business size.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just stop there because obviously you've heard this before.
Yeah. So actually, we call it graduating. So the book that describes EOS is called Traction. Right. It was written by Gino Wickman, and he's the one.
Got it on the shelf back here behind me too.
He's the one that brought together this system, right? And so the book is Traction, and so people can read the book and they can, what we call self-implement, right? Because these are simple, proven, practical tools. The key is not to confuse simple with easy. Those are not the same thing. They are simple tools. It's not easy. But you can self-implement and you get some benefit from it, right? Or you can hire a professional implementer such as myself who will work with the leadership team to implement the system into their organization. The way we do that is we start with a 90-minute, no obligation meeting with the leadership team to learn about them, to see if we think they're a fit, and they learn about EOS to see if they think it's a fit, right? So we start with that free 90-minute, no obligation meeting that gives them some value and some tools they can use regardless of whether or not they use an implementer. Assuming they say, yes, we want to go forward with an implementer. Then over the course of about 60 days, we have 3 full day sessions. And in those sessions, we get them up and running on EOS. We get them the foundational tools that we use, and we help them to clarify their vision and start getting traction, etc. From there, we go to quarterly meetings where the EOS implementer facilitates them, 3 quarterlies and a 2-day annual. These are all-day sessions. Most organizations, the average is they do that with the implementer for 2 years, and then they graduate. Because we're giving them, we're helping them get better each time, and we're giving them additional tools throughout those 2 years. Some graduate sooner. They'll be like, Hark, we got it. Thanks. You're out. Like, we're good. And that's good. I mean, my job is at the end of those 2 years to have them graduate, because I'm not there to become part of their staff. I'm there to help them implement the system. And so I want them to graduate. Some organizations, though, they like having that implementer come back for the quarterlies and the annual because they appreciate that outside voice and outside perspective. And it's hard at times to facilitate and participate. And so if the organization wants to have the implementer come back, we work that. But basically, it's a 2-year journey.
What is a key question or test when you go through that first screening process on that free 90-minute call to make sure that not necessarily are they at the right spot in the business, but I'm more interested in the personal side that, there is a connection there?
Yeah. So we talk, one of the requirements is that the organization, the leadership team, has to be willing to be open, honest, and vulnerable. It will not work if the leadership team is not willing to be open and honest and vulnerable. They don't need to be right now, but they need to be willing to be. And so that's one of the things as an implementer, we're gauging when we're in the room having the discussion is how open are they already? Are they willing to share information with each other? And does it seem like they would be willing to do so? And typically within that 90-minute meeting, the implementer can tell, like, hey, this is going to be a fit. This is going to work. Or like, you all are not ready. Like, you might want to do this. You're not ready. And so that's kind of what we're looking for, Cam, initially, is that. And then we want to make sure that, they can, that they're willing to commit to it, because it's committing to a 2-year journey. So there's no contracts. There's no pay up front. We do not do that. I go and I deliver a day session. And at the end of it, if they got value, they give me a check. If they didn't get value, they don't pay me. So when people say, how much does it cost? It's like, well, if you're getting value, you're going to pay me. And if you're not, then it doesn't cost you anything. So yeah, that.
Yeah, what would you say it looks like, to kind of ask the opposite here then, when people aren't open? What do you think that kind of looks like? And the reason I'm asking is because then I think people listening to the show might be able to recognize this inside of themselves or their own team of what kind of patterns they already have that might not set them up.
Yeah, so we work, again, so I'm not a consultant, because a consultant comes in and tells you what you should do. They have knowledge and they're there to tell you what you should do. I am a teacher, a coach, and a facilitator. I'm going to teach the tools, I'm going to coach the team on using the tools and hold them accountable, because that's what a coach does. And I'm going to facilitate, because I work with the leadership team, not just like the CEO. And so I need to make sure the team is aligned. And so when we're having that initial 90-minute conversation, it's are they aligned at all, or are they diametrically opposed? Because we ask what are the revenue numbers, and are they willing to share that with? This is just their leadership team. If they're not willing to share the revenue numbers with the other members of their leadership team, it calls into question their willingness to be open, right? We ask them, what do you want to get out of this business that you're not getting today? And so we can kind of judge by the answers to those questions how willing the team is to be open with each other.
So I'm playing around with this here because I find it really interesting, and I love the system. And one of the things that I've always been fond of is the cross pollination, if you will, or a military system that still applies in business. And thinking back to when you were running the engineer team with the Air Force, what was a project or even a command that, although one of the great things about the military is you never have to worry about money because there's always more coming in. Beyond the money part, that when you look back and do the self-reflection as the commander of that organization, that this piece of the EOS would have made it so much better for us if I'd understood it then.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just an easy one is our meeting structure. So we teach a particular meeting structure, which is designed to be the most effective and efficient use of time, so that people are because we got a leadership team in there. That's a lot of money, right? So we're taking their time. So we want to make sure we're investing it in moving the business forward. So we teach a meeting structure and cadence that is designed to do that. And how many meetings did you set in, briefings in the military, where you're like, this is a lot of money and we're not doing anything. We're simply receiving information, and 80% of it actually doesn't even apply to me. I mean, I would go to meetings in the Pentagon with the chief of staff of the Air Force and his immediate staff. I mean, these are 4 stars, 3 stars, 2 stars, lots and lots of colonels in the room. And, the meetings were not a good use of my time. Whereas in our structure, it's a very structured approach, and we spend at least half of it working on solving issues for the organization.
I'm interested, while we're talking the lessons there, I think I might have asked somebody this before, Dad, but we always talk about like the blank check mentality that kind of comes with some leadership aspects of the military. What do you think? Because that's something that does not exist in business. And, if you go in with that mindset, it can create a lot of negative outcomes for you. But what was a lesson from that kind of a mindset that you still use?
So, I think, so I'm going to talk around it. Maybe you can let me know, Cam. But I think to your point, it is in the military, you are trying to get the best for your unit, right? The best, whatever it costs. Damn the cost. I don't care. I am trying to get the best, whatever it is for the unit. And that's what you're supposed to do as a commander. You're trying to get the best for your unit. Whereas in the civilian world, right, you have to realize that that extra 20% better is 80% of the cost. And so really it's what is that sweet spot for, providing the best service or product, or, from getting the best from your vendor at a rate you can afford. So I don't know if that specifically answers your question, Cam, but I think it's, realizing those are 2 very different mindsets, to your point.
Yeah, no, I think that definitely answers it, and I think that's an important piece, but still the approach of what's best for the unit. And I think it's taking those kind of approaches, and then taking all those lessons, but then still recognizing that your constraints are different. It's a different world, because I mean we've talked about this so many different ways, but it's like, yeah, you can't go in trying to fight last week's fight. You can't go in trying to fight the last war. Like, you can't go in with that kind of a mindset. You've got to recognize those constraints there. Kind of getting into the military transition aspect of that, then, why do you think, and this might be a little bold, it might step on some toes, so sorry, veteran community, you guys know I love you, but it seems everyone we have on, we talk about these type of things. It's recognize the constraints and then apply everything in those new constraints. Why do people struggle so much to recognize that then? Is it that they're not choosing to see the new constraints, or what is it that they, like a kind of like voluntary blindness to it type thing, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think that is, endemic of the military community. I think that is, all entrepreneurs, right? All entrepreneurs, they have a big idea, they have this big thing, and they just want to go. And that's where that's where reality comes up and slaps them in the face. And so I think it's both, the military veteran, military spouse community, but it's the entrepreneurial, life. With Denver Founders Network, we talked, about how really the horror stories and understanding and getting an education around the failure and how do you deal with failure and the mental health aspects and the ability to maintain a positive attitude, are all important. And you have to have peer networks and all those support systems. So yes, I think it's just ubiquitous in the community, right? And we talk about the three things an entrepreneur needs to succeed, really, is an operating system for their business, which EOS is we provide that, right? They need a peer network for that support and a coach. If you want those three things in order to really succeed, it helps you it sets you up better to succeed, I should say, if you have those three things.
Right. I think that makes sense. I think that's whenever we're talking any, whether it's transition or anything else to do with, the veteran population, I think that's an important piece that you really pointing out there. You didn't say this bluntly, but they're people too. And you're looking at these problems that every person runs into. It's like, well, of course they're going to run into those problems too, because they're just people. I think there's a tendency for a lot of good reasons to put veterans on a pedestal there, but I think it's that little bit of the vulnerability of like, no, they are still just people, and we need to recognize that to give them the tools they need to move forward.
And one of the things that really excites me with EOS, with the system, is that it is a playbook for running your business, and a veteran can execute the shit out of a playbook, right? They can execute it, but they may not know how to write the playbook for running your business. And so I think EOS is especially well suited for veteran and military spouse companies, because it's that business playbook. They don't have to make it up. It gives them something to execute against, and they can do that so well. So that's one of the things that really drew me to EOS as well.
And that's a great point. We've talked about that before, and I've talked about it with several veterans. I mean, really in the larger picture of that is the franchise opportunities.
Yeah.
Because that is, and it is here's the SOP that this is the way we've been doing it. And every soldier has to learn their SOP. But you know what happens when they learn it is they're like, well, what if we did it a little bit different? What if we, modified it and did this or that? And I think that's a great point on the veteran side of one of the skills that, everybody, well, people who don't understand veterans, don't understand the military, think everybody's lockstep, single-minded.
Oh, yeah.
Do it this way. This is the only way. No, that's the way it appears on the outside. But you know what? It's expected for you to push back. because if you don't push back, you get eaten. I mean, at least in the world that I grew up in, I mean, you're going to get chewed up and thrown out on the banana belt, and that's what happens.
Yeah.
What is leading me to go ahead, Art.
No, I was just going to say, and we talk in the military, right? Feel free to disagree with the commander in the closed door session, right? But when we come out, we are in agreement. The commander has made the decision. You know, she said, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do. And with EOS, again, another similarity is we want the leadership team to be open and honest and vulnerable and bring their perspectives into our sessions. And they have to, because we have to smoke out if they're not aligned. And so we do that. We work with them to make sure they're aligned on where they're going and how they're going to get there, et cetera. And so we need them to do that in the session. But when they walk out of that session, this is where the leadership team has decided we're doing this. It's not, Otis decided or, Cam decided. This is where we're doing, the team decided.
What was it like? And I just want to touch on your transition because it's, everybody's is unique. What was it like going from, big Air Force, the bureaucracy, the comfort, the safety of it to, I'm just going to go off and do this design thinking thing on my own and do some other things on my own. How'd you come to that conclusion to take that path?
Yeah. So I was a traditional reservist for 10 years. So I did 28 total, 10 initial active, and then 18 as a reservist. But during that 18 as a reservist, I put in another 12 active. So between, activations and other statuses. But I was, when I was a traditional reservist, I worked at Sprint when it was large, before it was Sprint Nextel, before it got bought by T-Mobile. So I'd worked in a bureaucracy in the civilian sector, right? As well as in the military. And so when I retired, I knew I did not want to go work in another large corporation. So even though I had my, top secret SCI eligible and it was in cyber, I didn't want to go work for Raytheon or Lockheed or Northrop or whoever. And so, I decided to take a chance and do the design thinking, human-centered design, teaching and facilitation. And I was building that business. Now, I also knew what I had for a runway, which is important for all of your entrepreneurs out there, right? What is your financial and emotional and, support network runway? How long can you do this? You need to understand what that is. So I knew what my runway was, and I was building the design thinking business, which takes time to build a business. And I got involved in the veteran entrepreneurial ecosystem, Otis, which is where we met. And then, volunteered for Bunker Labs because Bunker came into town and they were doing veteran entrepreneurship, and then got offered the opportunity to join the staff, as I said earlier, and then ended up having different positions until I ended up, helping to run the organization. But what happened in that, when you're the president, chief operating officer for a national organization, you're no longer working with the entrepreneurs. You're running the business, right? Or helping run the business. And so I kind of, as part of that, I was like, well, when I got out of the Air Force, I wanted to work with business owners. And so that's one of the reasons was, EOS enables me to get back to working directly with the business owners as opposed to running the organization that is helping the business owners.
You mentioned your experiences with, Sprint and the bureaucracy there. This actually brings up something I'm surprised. I don't think we've ever actually talked about this on the show. We talk a lot about the downsides of bureaucracy. There are, of course, some pros there. As your business grows, you need a little bit of bureaucracy. But one thing I'm interested in is what do you think the biggest differences are between the two bureaucracies of civilian bureaucracies, what you saw at Sprint, versus the military? Because that's got to be, I don't know the stats behind it, but that's got to be the biggest bureaucracy out there is the military, right?
Yeah. So I think part of it goes back to the conversation we were having earlier about money, right? In the military, there was going to be funding, right? Especially at the levels, when you're at the unit level, yeah, you have a budget and you never get it, but there's money, right? And you have that, and you don't have to show a return on investment, not really, right? You execute your mission, you're able to support what you're supposed to be able to support, but nobody's gonna, well, you spent $8,000 on this. What's the financial return? There isn't one. Whereas in the corporate bureaucracy in the civilian world, right, it is financial driven because it's a business, and the business unit has to make money. The business, and how you spend the money within that, you better be able to demonstrate how this is helping to bring more money into the organization in the event of especially a for-profit, right, a large for-profit. And so, I went through numerous rounds of layoffs at Sprint because of, we the financials weren't coming in at the time. And so, we'd go through every quarter, more people would be let go. You didn't see that in the military, right? Every quarter, the business unit was evaluated on how it made money or not. Eventually we sold off the business unit I was in. I don't recall ever selling off a military unit. Right?
They've been sold out. I don't know if we've sold them off.
Yes. So, and then there's the decisions around, do you go to the new company that acquired it, or what? Anyway, so I think that, Cam, to your question, I think it's the financial aspect is one of the biggest differences between the bureaucracies.
You mentioned earlier about wanting to work with business owners. How do you see that as driving the impact that you make or the legacy that you leave?
Yeah. So we have a thing we call the EOS life, living the EOS life. And this is what I want as both for myself as an implementer and for every entrepreneur that I work with, right? And the EOS life is doing what you love with people you love, making a big impact, being compensated appropriately with time for other passions. And so that is what I am living myself, and what I want the entrepreneurs I work with to live. That's the legacy, right? To get them to that point where they can do that. And the fifth one, the having time for other passions, is really like, that's where we really want to get to, where they're being compensated appropriately with time for other passions. And compensated appropriately is, they define that, right? Whatever they feel they need for what they want to do with their life. So that's the legacy, is if I can get my clients there, then we've succeeded.
I think the time for other passions is such an interesting piece there, because it does so much for you. And I think it's just kind of ironic, because you tend to think of that as something down the road, but it's also something where it's like those passions, that connection, whether it's, a passion inside the work or especially other passions outside of it, you're going to get that extra energy, and that energy is going to help you drive forward. What do you think, or how do you think people can help to build that in the early days of their business, in the true startup time, where it's like you're pushing burnout every single week and barely having time to, eat 3 meals a day, let alone go out and, to use my easy example, go coach some rugby or something like that.
Yeah. So, I think it's prioritization in your life, right? You have to prioritize in your life. You've heard how many people on their deathbed wish they'd spent more time at work, right? But there's a level where, in order to have the income to do what you want to do, right, there's a balance. And typically entrepreneurs are motivated by passion with what they're doing. And so they have a passion for that. ideally they fall in love with the problem they're trying to solve, not necessarily just their solution, but the problem, so that they can adapt their solution. But they've fallen in love with solving this challenge or problem. But too often, then they get so involved in that they forget the other things, and they end up with the business running them instead of them running the business. And so with EOS, what we really try to do is to help them get to there. And EOS, like I said, 2 years is the average. It's a journey, right? So we start with where we are, Cam, to your point, right? And so, how much time do you have now for other passions? What are you working on? How do we get there? What is your goal? And so it's a journey to help them set it up. And part of it as a coach, right? And Otis knows this better than I, right? Part of it is just, bringing it up and reinforcing it to their face. Like, you said this, remember? And now you've lost that in the weeds. Let's get back to what you said, that as a coach, holding them accountable, right? So yes, and realize, people say work-life balance, they, whatever the words you use, realize at certain points, the business is going to take more time. At certain points, family should take more time, or whatever your other passions are. So it's just prioritizing those and not losing sight of it.
And
what do you think is the? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna jump on. I mean, because he opened the door, so I've got that little soft slow pitch that I gotta hit on with. Life isn't managed. Life isn't balanced. It's managed. I always screw up my punchlines.
Yeah,
that's why I don't do this. I'm not a comedian, because I would screw up my punchlines all the time. But really, if you think about it, and you hit the nail on the head. It's what's important right now, and how do I reprioritize? If I'm spending all my time doing this, working on a proposal for winning new business, then when that proposal's submitted, what am I doing to reprioritize the categories of my life and make sure that I am taking care of what's important to me and not burning myself out? Because that's what happens to folks. I mean, they burn their passion out, right? Passion's what's fueling you. But if you're not going to that passion gas station, swinging by and putting a little extra ethyl in there, you know what? You're not going to be able to sustain it, and you're going to hit the wall and crash and burn.
Yeah, I mean, and with my family history, I've had, my father died when I was young. I've had 2 sisters who have passed, nieces and nephews. Every day is once in a lifetime. Don't forget that. Every day is once in a lifetime. You only get it one time. So, again, not saying, throw the business away and just spend your time with something else, but realize that management of the time.
That actually brings to mind, I had another question ready, but what you're saying there makes me think, and you said this earlier as well, of like managing the mental health aspects of, being an entrepreneur, all of the different negativity that comes around it. One thing that there's always a little bit of irony to me whenever I think about this is as an entrepreneur, one of the phrases that I love and it helps me a lot is, work beats worry. If you put in the work, you can get rid of that anxiety, you can get rid of that worry, you can keep moving things forward with that. There's also this productivity paradox that we've talked about before, which is the more you do, the more you're creating for yourself to do. And so, that's just one example of it. But how do you think entrepreneurs should handle that negativity? Like, what does that balance look like of not trying to squeeze all the juice out of the day, but you're still squeezing enough juice to move the business forward?
Yeah, and it goes back to the priorities and what needs to happen now. What do we need to knock out? And so it's just that management. One of the things that we do working with the leadership team is a tool we call Delegate and Elevate, right? This is about working to your own unique true potential. And so we have a tool we talk about where, what are you doing? How can you identify everything you're doing? Identify what you're good at and what you like, what you're not good at and you don't like, and then how do we delegate so that you can rise to your own unique ability? Because what drains people a lot is when they're good at something, but they don't like to do it. And they end up spending 80% of their time in that because they don't feel there's anybody else, right? Well, I'm good at it. I hate it. It drains my energy, but somebody's got to do it. And I don't, right? And so we work with them on how do we delegate and elevate, which enables them to have better energy, right? Because they're operating and doing what they like to do.
Going back to the question I had loaded before that, before that good idea fairy came by, what do you think is the biggest problem that you see coming down the pipeline with entrepreneurs, as far as whether technology, cultural? What do you think is the big problem that's coming down the pipeline for the rest of the year?
So I think two things. One is for those firms that need financing. I think just the reality with the Silicon Valley Bank and the First Republic Bank, money's getting tighter, right? So I just think that's a reality. Whether it's VC funding, private equity, whether it's loans, whatever. I think money is just going to be tighter, and so companies need to be ready for that. The other is the big unknown, right? Is AI. What's going to happen with artificial intelligence, with ChatGPT as just the tip of the iceberg? What does that mean for companies? And that will affect different companies differently, right? Those that are, heavily reliant on creativity and people coming up with stuff out of the wild. ChatGPT, as the example, doesn't do out of the wild, right? It chronicles what's out there already, to include all the disinformation. So, I don't know what the answer is, but I know that's going to be a challenge, right? AI is going to be something organizations have to deal with. In fact, I was reading an article where it said, hey, when you're applying for a job on your resume, you used to put proficient with Word and Microsoft products. It's like they don't like it's there are job advertisements that say experience with ChatGPT, and that's a requirement in the job now. So.
Yeah, and that's a whole nother level. And matter of fact, talk about recent articles. I was just saw a headline that IBM is thinking about pulling back on. It was a large number. I want to say it was like 1,000, taking 1,000 jobs off the market that they currently have open because they think that AI can backfill those jobs. So. Yeah,
I think it was 1,700, if I remember right. 1,700 something. It was a big number.
Yeah,
yeah.
That's not an insignificant drop, even for a company the size of IBM.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
That's not an insignificant drop in the bucket.
Yep.
So it just makes you, the bigger lesson I'll say is you got to always be improving. You can't rest on your laurels.
Yeah.
That wasn't what I was going to say as might I learned today, but you know what? That's a great emphasis of it because it truly is. If you're satisfied with who you are today, will you be satisfied with that same person tomorrow?
Yeah.
If the skills that you have today got you the job, will they help you keep the job next week?
Yeah.
So I think it's that attitude. That's a great re-emphasis on that of how do I continuously improve? How do I adopt a system that helps me continuously improve and helps my business continue to improve? Because you may be in a blue ocean today, but guess what? Everybody else is sailing towards that blue ocean right now, and it'll be a red ocean tomorrow if you're not careful. So,
yeah. And Cam, to your point on, what do you see is happening and how busy entrepreneurs are. We can have a whole long discussion on activity versus productivity, but right. But how busy are you making time to keep abreast of what's happening in your industry or in the markets, if that's what impacts what you're doing? You have to make time for that continual improvement, professional development as well. You owe that to your employees if you're the business owner.
Yeah, I think we can't we can't predict exactly what's going to happen with AI or, insert any technology here. But the thing we can predict is the rate is that things will change.
Yep.
And I think it's just accepting that, especially in entrepreneurs, but really just in life in general. I think that's a big piece of it. It's just accepting that these things are coming and be proactive with it. I'm thinking back to, and y'all probably know more about this than I do because I was young at the time, but the coal miners, and it's teach them to code or whatever the phrase was. I don't know which politician was branding that, but it's that whole like, okay, well, just teach them the next thing. There's a lot of problems with those type of things, but you can be proactive in your own life with that. Take that approach of, look, hey, I don't know what's coming, but I know I can work in this direction and still get some benefit and carve out my niche in the future, right? Like you talking about putting it on your resume. I heard this business model the other day of going and literally just selling people what you do with AI because you know how to write the prompts. Like, I don't know if y'all ever took these classes. I know in school I had to take classes where I learned how to Google properly. And it's going to be the same type of thing of just like, hey, just being good at Googling is a little bit of a skill. Being good at AI is going to be that same skill. It's just finding those different ways that you can move forward and, implement those skills.
Yeah. Yep.
So Camden, what'd you learn?
Much simpler than that. It's just Hark, you said this, just the emotional runway. I had never thought about that really before. When you're looking at the runway, people always talk finances and those type of things. It is a grueling drive. It's a grueling journey to go reach that point of being a successful entrepreneur. If you're not willing to put in 2 years with, your nose to the grindstone, then you might want to think about doing something else or come up with a better plan. So that's a good one for me. Emotional runway. Never heard that one before.
How about you, Hark? What'd you learn?
And you and I have talked about this previously, Otis, but I think it was reemphasized the work-life management as opposed to balance, and just even the phraseology of that. So I'm going to try to remember to keep that in my lexicon and not just when you happen to remind me of it.
Yeah, because usually when we're talking about it, it's over a beer. So yeah.
That is work-life management.
That is. Hark, how do folks find you, learn what you got going on next?
Yeah, so my website, you can reach it at Hark, EOS.com, HARKEOS.com, or EOSWorldwide.com/Hark-Herold. Spell Herold HEROLD, not the other variations out there. So that, and then, by the way, anybody who wants a free copy of Traction, that book, feel free to reach out to me. I will send you a free copy of the book. You can reach me through my website there or at hark.herold@eosworldwide.com. And then I will be I'm working on giving a overview of EOS, a get a grip, what the heck is EOS, session at the Colorado Springs Chamber of Commerce on the morning of June 20th. And we'll be setting up an RSVP Eventbrite page for that here in the near future.
Awesome, man. Well, it is always great to hang out with you, Hark. And although this time it is a little bit different, my mouth is a little parched because it usually is over here. But still good to hang out with you, man. We really appreciate your time today.
All right. Thank you very much.
Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank you all for listening to the Cam and Otis Show, and a special thanks to our guest, Hark Herold, for joining us today. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to pass it along to someone else so they can enjoy it too. You can follow the Cam and Otis Show on Facebook and Instagram, and you can watch full videos of the show on our YouTube page. And while you're there, hit that subscribe button too. As always, the full archive of our episodes available at www.camandotisshow.com. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next time.